been a while.
Our 4 to 6 week hiatus became like 3 months.
It's been weird, man.
I'm glad that we're back at it.
Tough times. Tough times have been upon me.
We should tell the people where we've been.
Well, job changes, things of that nature. And I'm getting married this month, so.
Congratulations,
Thanks,
by the way.
Everybody's usually like, fuck, that sucks for you. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm going to be a happily married man.
You'll do married life okay.
I can't wait to have kids. That's a bad thing. I have to force myself to wait. I want children so bad.
I'm scared that like in 2 months you're going to be announcing it.
Life is over. It was nice knowing ya. No. But yeah, we're getting married and we're having a small wedding. And by small, I mean it's going to be me and her in a courthouse. Not anything really that involved, but I live a life of solitude and low amount of plans. I like being in my house and doing things in my house.
It's not a bad idea. What's the use of spending $20,000, $30,000 on a wedding? The wedding plans that you guys had before this, like a year ago, it's like, we're going to fly everybody to Palm Springs.
Yeah. It was just like, we were like thinking about it and we're just like, I don't think that's really us. We're very private people. You know, we enjoy the comfort of our own home and each other's company. And I've got a big, crazy family and I just want to go get married. And it's legitimately just to us a formality. This is the formality of saying, okay, we live together. Like, let's do our taxes together. Like, I don't even think she's going to take my last name, which is fine. Like, that doesn't. I'm so unbothered.
If Liv would have chosen that, I wouldn't have like fought that for 1 second.
I don't care. Like, I don't care. My relationship is built on a friendship. And as long as it's that, that's cool with me.
You guys are going to throw a party in a few months.
Yeah, we're going to throw a party.
That's all you need.
Everybody's going to come hang out, have some drinks. It's going to be good.
When is that, by the way? August
10th.
10th. Okay.
So, yeah. You'll be getting an invitation here by the end of the month. So
we will be there.
Yeah, man, this is your recommendation. I am curious to know why you recommended it, because if you told me last time, I've done forgot. Because it's been a little while.
To be fair, it's been very long. The Talking Heads. This is a band that I never thought I would have brought to the podcast. A few years ago, I got into this album, and within the last year, I feel like they've been coming up in my life a lot for some reason. Like, my uncle passed away last year, and I inherited some of their records from him. They just released their concert film on Criterion, Stop Making Sense.
Yeah.
Wildly considered one of the best concert films ever made. It's directed by Jonathan Demme, who directed Silence of the Lambs only 3 years later.
Okay.
And it's great.
This is The Big Suit.
The Big Suit.
Yeah.
Yes. I think I sent you a picture of it yesterday.
Yeah.
Like on the playlist. I don't know. I think there's something really interesting with this album in particular in terms of the way it's structured, paced, composed, and that's all stuff that we'll get into in the review. I'm curious, did you know anything about them prior to me recommending this album?
No, like nada. Zip. Like, okay, so Burning Down the House is like literally the only song by them that I like recognize.
Really? You never heard Psycho Killer?
Maybe. I did listen to those picks that you had pulled up, but Burning Down the House was covered by Dave Matthews, and I heard that growing up.
Oh,
like,
really?
I've heard the song live, performed by Dave Matthews. Like,
that came up on Shuffle one of the last times I was at your apartment, and I thought like, oh, you're listening to Talking Heads, but it wasn't.
I don't have any knowledge of the band, any history. I don't know anything about them culturally. I'm completely blind to the band. I wouldn't even have recognized the title of the band being The Talking Heads. Like, you recommended it, and I'm like, oh, okay, like this is going to be something really niche, and no one's heard of this. And I'm like, oh, wait, no, this was a popular band.
I feel like they've only gotten more popular as time goes on, too, which is weird. You never heard the song Once in a Lifetime?
Mm-mm.
Really? That's like their signature song. I hear that everywhere I go.
I don't know, man. I am blind on certain things. Like, and I don't know. Sometimes doing the podcast makes me realize how ignorant I am when it comes to certain cultural subgenres. It's very strange. I'm down my own rabbit hole, so, I mean, you know, I could be like, oh, man, have you ever heard Moonlight Sonata or, you know, Prelude No. 4 by Chopin?
You've been in a jazz mode.
Yeah, and people are like, what? You know, I can bust out playing the piano, and, like, to a certain group of people, they're like, that's cool, I guess, but, like, what I'm playing, they're not going to enjoy that.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a fucking opinion. That's life. But there are just some things that I'm not unaware of. People all the time will tell me like, oh, you know this song, Jason Aldean. I'm like, you don't know that song? I'm like, sorry, bub. Sorry, bub. I haven't drove a pickup truck in quite a while. You know, I don't know what to tell you.
It's a good thing if you don't recognize Jason Aldean songs.
Well, we were drinking Miller Lite the other night, and I looked at the can, and it's fucking Luke Combs edition. I'm like, what's so fucking Luke Combs about this fucking Miller Lite that I'm drinking?
I saw that.
Like, what the fuck is going on?
We saw Kamasi Washington, by the way.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that, man. Like,
No.
honestly, I felt like a spoiled little bitch. You know, as somebody that we don't get a chance to go to a whole lot of concerts. We get to go to maybe 2 concerts a year, and it's usually very unpopular music. I feel like, I'm just saying, like, they're non-mainstream artists. Like, I'm not going to, like, Riverbend to hear Zach Bryan or whoever the fuck the country artist is of the week.
I would hope not.
Or I'm not going to see a classic rock band. Like, I know you were talking about Liv wanting to see Red Hot Chili Peppers and
Your favorite band in the world.
yeah, fucking hate them. We saw Kamasi Washington, and that was special because he's a jazz artist, and I've never seen a jazz show. You know, and I could tell somebody I went to a jazz show, and I did. You know, I told people at work, I went to a jazz show, and it was cool. I told them like it was cool. It was different. You know, that was nothing I had ever been to before.
I wonder what the average person thinks when you tell them that you went to a jazz show.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It always freaks me out because guy I used to work with asked me what kind of music I like, and I told him, I'm like, I don't know why, but as of late, it's just I've really loved jazz. And he asked me, he gave me like the time of day and said, like, who's your favorite jazz artist? And I was like, fuck, I've never had a follow up to that fucking question.
Yeah. Most people don't care.
Yeah. And told him a handful of songs that I liked. I'm like, I don't know if I have a favorite jazz artist. And like that like put me on the spot. I'm like, when I think of jazz music, I listen to an assortment of songs because I don't really know of a whole lot of jazz artists. But like now it's like we went and saw Kamasi Washington. That was an artist in a band. Like we did that. It was an actual show. It wasn't like just some fucking jazz club. Like it was a performance, and that was cool.
It wasn't like a challenging thing either. Like, ooh, a jazz show, no vocals really.
Right. It was chaotic as fuck, by the way. I don't know about you, but there's a lot of people I think we could sit in that room and would fucking hate it.
I was kind of worried about Isaiah when we went. I didn't know if that would be his thing.
I was worried too, and I think he's like a pretty open guy when it comes to music. Like the guy goes to fucking music festivals and like he's down for the new experience. He doesn't really give a fuck. They were like really fucking dynamic, and the most recent album is like the most chaotic shit I think he's done. The compositions that he was doing were fucking crazy, and then they were just playing like half the time. They were just jamming, and that was exactly what I wanted. You know, like that. It was a good time.
I just wanted to see improv, solos galore. It was amazing.
It was cool to see their chemistry. You know, we were close enough to catch the in action. We're not looking on a screen out in the lawn. We were close enough to see them interact.
This was a small, intimate venue.
Yes. Unfortunately, I think it's hard with that much instrumentation and chaos going on. I think it was a little messy as far as like the mix. You know what I mean? It's not like a fucking studio mastered thing, but like they were playing, and it was fun to like bounce around, listening to the drums and the saxophone, like being able to focus in live in the moment, like being like, damn, this is crazy. Like to see this shit happen in real time. It was just, you know, there was no do-over. There was no, let's re-record that.
I think I only really noticed one tempo slip up the entire show. I couldn't even tell you when it was.
Right.
I think the drummer got off like a beat like one time, and they were right back to it.
They were tight. It was a really good time. But anyway, we need to talk about what we're drinking.
Yeah.
We're drinking Urban Artifact. Lo and behold, no surprise there. We drink them a lot.
What is this, like cherry vanilla?
Cherry vanilla. It's called Wrangle. It's a cherry vanilla tart. It's really great.
If we're never sponsored by Le Fin du Monde, then I think Urban Artifact is the next on the list.
We do enjoy their beers. It'd be nice to have a little supply. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm gonna send some emails tonight.
There you go. Talking Heads. I mean, it's a pretty short record, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Really digestible. So you've been around this record for a couple years.
A few, at least 3. I remember the first time I listened to it, I was on my way to meet Logan at that brewery in Springboro. The name is escaping me for some reason. The Wright brothers inspired one. What are they called? You know what I'm talking about.
Warped Wing.
Warped Wing. I was on my way to meet him there, and like I think at the time I had realized that I was not well versed in 80s music at all, and I just thought I'm gonna throw something on. And I knew this album. I've known this album cover for years, like all the way back to like high school probably. And I put it on, and I was pleasantly surprised how fast I went in tune with the record, like how fast it came to me.
Gotcha. I was in a different boat.
Yeah?
It took me, in my second listen, I started to enjoy it. My first listen, I did not really care for it.
I was curious how you'd react to this.
And the first pass is always like, you never know. I mean, like, I don't want to say like I had formed an opinion, but it was not what I was expecting at all. For some reason, when I look at the cover and I think of like an old record and I have no familiarity with the band, my first impression was I'm going to go in and listen to like some drony alt rock or something to that nature for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But then I was like, oh, okay. Like there is some like droning. I don't know if droning's the right adjective, but there's some looseness throughout the record.
I think the back half for sure has some really atmospheric stuff going on.
And I like that. And the instrumentation was the thing that I wasn't expecting for some reason. I don't know why. It was just the unfamiliarity of the whole listening experience just threw me for a loop. And, history of the band, nothing. So I enjoyed the tone a lot. And there's a lot of elements of this album that are apparent in like Japanese city pop, like the crunchy guitar licks or like the synth crunch, electric piano. There's a pop element to it.
Yes.
And that I wasn't expecting. For some reason, I expected it to be like a really dark and uncomfortable experience for some reason. Like just like looking at like the cover of the album, like it looks like, oh, this is going to be some fucking deep, dark shit we're going to hop into here. You can't even see their faces. It's so cool and edgy.
I've never really taken a close look at this album cover. I've just always known it as like the 4 photos. Now that I think about it, it's not a great encapsulation of what the album is.
Right.
Like this is one of the first album covers that were generated by computers. It might have been the first one. Like this is like early 80s computer technology.
Right.
And like I'm guessing the excitement of working with something new is what caused them to choose this. I think if you flip this album around, hopefully I don't knock anything
By the way,
over.
we have like an actual physical vinyl copy of it in front of us.
This was the original cover that they chose.
Oh, okay.
And they switched it later. I don't know if that's a better representation either.
Maybe not.
Like warplanes?
Yeah.
On this dancey rock album? I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say there is, a lot of dance element to it. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I'm trying to remember what descriptors I gave you when I did my recommendation months ago. I think I mentioned African polyrhythms, or just African music in general being an influence. I think I mentioned that they were kind of a punk-esque band before this. And then as their career went on, they kind of added these dance rock and pop elements into the sound. If you listen to the album after this, Speaking in Tongues, it's straight up the 80s are here. New wave, synth pop.
Gotcha.
And that record's really good too. But yeah, I was really curious how you'd react to this because I know it's not really your lane at all.
It's not. I want to hop in and listen to a few tracks here so we can get started. But I will say, I think the discussion is going to kind of open up more of my opinion because I don't really know that I've formed one solid yet. There are things that I like, but I don't know that I'm going to be returning to the record. When you show me something new recently that I can think of that I really latched onto was Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
I did a good dive back into Stevie, and I'm never upset that it's on, after the fact. I think this is something that, again, maybe the discussion will change that, but I want to know a little bit more about them and their discography before I form a solid opinion. We'll get there. Let's hop into some music.
I'll probably get into context stuff as we go.
Okay. Yeah, let's listen to a few and we'll be right back. First track, homie.
Born Under Punches. Starting off real funky.
Yeah. What, the fucking gynecologist fucking give you a knuckle sandwich on the way out? The fuck, man? What does that mean?
Before I read the interpretation on Genius, My interpretation of it at first was when you're born, you're guaranteed to endure some suckiness.
Suffering, baby.
Now, like, Genius is talking about, like, the Watergate scandal and paranoia after that happened, like, distrust in government. And, like, I do get that because he's talking about, like, the hands of a government man. But it doesn't read to me like a very political song altogether.
No. You, like, have the constant refrain of, and the beat goes on, and the beat goes on.
It's the heat goes on.
Oh, the heat. I'm sorry.
Yes. I thought it was the beat, too, for the longest time. There's a lot of examples of misheard lyrics on this record for me as
like
well.
The, woo! And the, and the screaming. Like, what the fuck is that?
There's a lot of, like, ad-libbing going on.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
During, like, the final third of this track. These refrains.
A lot of, like, weird noises going in the middle. Like, why?
It sounds like a woman, like, squeaks at the very beginning of that refrain, too,
Yeah.
which I've always found very odd.
Makes me slightly uncomfortable. It's not the antlers, or not, excuse me, not the antlers, but the swans.
Swans. You always go back to swans.
Makes me uncomfortable.
It makes me uncomfortable, too. That's the appeal for me. Yeah, this track, it is very funky, but you're right. There is something, like, unsettling about it. Like, this is dancing at the end of the world, like a deranged man preaching to me.
There also is, like, the uncomfortable feeling. It doesn't start out, like, open you up to, like, some good sound. It starts out, like, really dissonant.
It does. The guitar in this track is, like, very thin and scratchy, and it's a constant. Like, it never drops out. And the solos at the end of the track also don't help with that feeling either. Or we get our Macintosh solo.
What do you mean?
It sounds like a computer malfunctioning more than a real instrument.
Yeah. From what I read, the instrumentation on the record was a lot of loops. Like, they brought a lot of looped sounds together.
Kind of. That's the intention, but computer technology wasn't at the state where they could loop things. They played it so it was robotic. Like, it is them playing all the way through the track. It's not really a loop, but it's supposed to sound like a loop.
Gotcha. Okay.
This is before looping was a thing.
Really? Okay.
David Byrne called it them being like human samplers.
Okay. Who is David Byrne?
He's the lead singer of this band.
Okay. Say I know nothing.
Who was mentioned as early as JPEG Mafia, All My Heroes Are Cornballs.
Okay.
The very first track from that record. Jesus Forgive Me, I'm a Thought. Speaking in Tongues Like I'm David Byrne.
Oh, okay.
Although I think he...
Nice.
Which, Speaking in Tongues, their next album, I think he mispronounces his name. He calls him David Bryan instead.
Oh, gotcha.
But yeah, did you notice that there's like no chord changes on any song on the entire album? There's one root. Every song begins with a root. And everything is built around this one thing.
I was going to say, there was a lot of times throughout my listening experience that I'm like, am I in the next song? Am I in the next song now? Wait, how far am I? I'm 4 songs in. What the fuck?
It's very repetitive. Just locking into these grooves. And instead of like having like sections like A, B, C, it's like there's only one section, but we're going to build things up around it, take things away at certain points. So things being different is just like the layers. How many layers are going on at any given time? That's kind of like one of the big things that intrigues me about this album so much. They made the music exciting without changing much throughout the runtimes. It's really weird. I can't think of other bands that really do this.
As an opening track, I actually don't really care for it that much.
Damn, really?
I mean, it's not a bad song. Like, I'm not structurally and all that. It's fine. I'm not knocking it. It's not like it's a bad song to listen to, but I just don't think it's my flavor. The repetitive nature of the opening track is tough for me. It's like so aggressive. Like it's a lot. It's a lot. Like, okay, if you like put the song in the confines of like, okay, this is the tone, this is the chord progression, it's uncomfortable to listen to. You have like the weird wailings and the people doing that, like that just happens, you know. And I'm like, I don't know if I like that. I don't know if that's for me. It's not a bad song, but when I think of listenability, being like, oh, let's put that song on. There are tracks on this record where I'm like, oh yeah, like that's a good song. Like I can put this on. But this track, I'm like, okay.
I'm curious how this will differ for you compared to the next two tracks that we'll get into.
Yeah.
I think the first opening leg of this record is everything fits together musically.
I guess I want to get into at some point the theme of the record. Like, is there a through? Does it tie into the title? To me, my interpretation of the record, from what I've heard, I listened to the record about 5 times, and to me, it's like, okay, this is a like groovy record, and that's the flavor. That's what you get. Now let's work with that. And I'm thinking, okay, my first impression of the record was like, okay, I didn't enjoy it that much. Second and third time, okay, I'm latching on, and like the fourth and fifth time, I'm like, okay, I can dissect this in a way where I'm gonna have to orient myself in picking up on the positives. Like, I like the topics. Like, I'm a big fan of like criticizing the government. I'm all for it, baby. I am all for that. And I think of the time when you're talking about like Watergate and stuff, like Watergate is one of the most complicated fucking scandals of all time. Like, there's a lot more than what was on the surface. Like, there was a lot of staffers for Nixon that were part of the CIA that wanted to remove him from power. Like, there is a lot of things in that story that are like really complicated.
I didn't even know that.
There's a lot. Like, there was a guy that wrote articles for the newspapers when it came out that he was just like a junior journalist, but he was really a CIA agent, which makes you think like, okay, if that happened then, what's happening now? Like, I get really uncomfortable thinking about things like that, but you need to be aware of like, okay, by the way, people, if you haven't figured it out yet, like, capitalism is great and all, you know, they'll sell it to you, but the fucking companies are owned by the government and the government is owned by the companies. Like, there is no separation. And so when you think about who's giving you your media and things of that nature, even back then, when it comes to like television broadcasts and your newspapers, like, there are people that work for the government that will make damn sure that certain things come out. There's a lot of moving pieces and things like that. And when you think about, okay, who is writing articles to make people, you know, put dirt on them, and that's just like, that's the fucking tip of the iceberg.
I think about this way more now than I used to. Glad you brought this up.
It's getting harder to hide, I think, with social media. Like, the spreading of information has become a lot easier, and I still think there's a lot of people out there that like have no fucking idea, and I envy the ignorance of not knowing. But when you think about this track being called Born Under Punches, basically saying like, yes, you will encounter suffering in your life no matter what, and they're talking about the government and all these things, like, that's always gonna be, that is a fact of life, that you can't do much there, little bud. You might as well just clock in and clock out and go about your day. That's a hard reality to accept.
It is.
And I think as we get deeper into the record, certain themes on certain songs are going to make that truth a little bit more bearable. We'll get there.
We will get there, yes.
Cross-eyed and painless.
It looked like you might have been feeling yourself a bit more on this one compared to the last track.
I'm fucking on beer number 2, bub. I'm feeling pretty all right. I'm going to tell you.
That will do it.
It'll do it every time.
Miller Lite is the elixir of life.
Don't say that too loud. I come from a family of alcoholics. This is one of the songs that I like thematically a lot.
The themes of identity.
Yeah, and like facts and truth, what they do to the human mind. It's quite interesting. This album is more applicable to me than I would like it to be in some ways. Like, you know.
It's kind of unexpected, actually. Maybe I should have seen that coming.
Well, all right, let me
break it down for you.
Let me give you the fucking, let me really fucking put you in a full Nelson here.
Okay. I'm ready.
Gonna take you from the top buckle here of a fucking... Anyway, I love the themes of truth and the facts. We hop into lyrics here. Facts don't come with point of view. Facts don't do what I want them to. Facts just twist the truth around. Facts are living turned inside out. Okay.
Surprisingly deep, like, considering some of the other lines.
Yeah, and then we're just in here fucking hitting that fucking cowbell like, not a fucking care in the world. We're just fucking cruising along. I'm like, okay. Like, I just fucking litter that in there real fast. Yeah, like, the truth is weird. Like, humans aren't logical in the way that we orient ourselves in the world. everything we do comes from like our own personal identity, and we tell ourselves a story every day when we wake up, like, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is how I feel about things, this is my truth. And a lot of the times we ignore the facts of things to fulfill our own personal truths. Truth is a lot different than fact. You know, when you lay down a factual statement, a statement that cannot be undone. Okay, 2 + 2 is 4.
Yes.
Okay, but somebody says, no, 2 + 3 is 4. And you can argue with them for hours on end, trying to convince them that 2 + 2 is 4, but that does not fulfill their belief.
There's something cold and rigid about a fact.
Right.
I think I wrote, it's a reduction of the true nature of things. I might have stolen that from somewhere that I read, but like not taking into account like human emotion.
Yeah, and like when you tell somebody like a statistic, when you say, this is the data that we gathered, that statement can feel like a personal attack. So when you state facts, they make people uncomfortable, and it does not adhere to the logic to somebody's personal beliefs. And it's difficult as a person to be like, that's not me. And I'm guilty of this as well. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, someone could say something and I get fucking pissed because it's like, well, that's not me. You know what I mean? Well, I'm not a part of that negative statistic because I don't want to believe that I'm a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You can block out those things from your mind and
Right.
convince yourself that you're not.
Right.
You're never going to win an argument like firing off statistics to somebody. It's very impersonal.
That is how you win an argument, though.
Technically, but not in the mind of the person that's losing.
Right. You don't want to kill somebody with the truth. You don't win an argument like that because somebody that's wrapped up in delusion won't hear it.
Right.
That goes with like all things. Like, human beings we're weird. Yeah, I had this thought the other day while at work, and I was like, isn't it fucking hilarious that we're sitting here on these fucking computers? I'm fucking pissed off, and I'm sitting here trying to fucking type words on a keyboard into a fucking machine that used to be rocks. And I'm like, this is the fucking most bizarre thing. Like, I'm not okay with it. It just feels like, what the fuck have we done? We're just consciousness sitting here going, this is what it's all about, baby.
For example, I just got a new job, or not working it yet. But
You've accepted a position.
I have. Mail carrier. And I know, me looking into this from an outsider's perspective, I'm like, the mail is an important job. Like, that's important.
Right.
I know that once I start doing it, it's going to be like envelopes and envelopes of like advertisements and like spam mail and junk.
Vote no on issue 2.
Like, this is what I'm doing. I'm walking 10 miles a day to deliver like total crap.
Yeah.
What's
Are you excited?
What's inspiring me to do this? Besides keeping the lights on.
There are benefits. There are benefits to it.
I'll have health insurance.
You will have health insurance. Good health insurance, actually.
Yes.
Some of the best health insurance money can buy.
I'm looking forward to this greatly. Instead of spending $140 at the doctor just to get my prescription refilled.
See, but that's what you value, though. We aren't even talking about the music, by the way.
No. Look what you do to us.
This is what happens when you sit here and you overthink all day long. You bottle this shit up all day, and then someone hears it. Someone listen to what I have to say. This is my opinion.
It's not a bad thing. I listened to a few other podcasts covering this album leading up to today, and I'm surprised by how often it's like, this track sounds good. It's cool. All right, next track. Or it'll be like reiterating info from Wikipedia or something.
Right.
What's the fun in that? You know?
You got to talk. You got to get deeper. I don't know. I think it's always interesting, and this is a common theme that we bring up throughout covering various albums of different decades or movies. Like, the human experience has not changed a whole lot.
No.
And for some reason, we think we're fucking special. And you'll find very common throughout time that the same human problems, the human experience, it's a constant. And no matter how many fail-safes we put in place and systems we put in place, there is always going to be problems. And we'll find problems. If we create a solution, we'll find a problem to that solution. Like, that is just the nature of things. Getting a little bit older, I'm in my mid-20s. I just turned 25. I'm recognizing that it's cool for things to not be okay. Like, it's fine.
I'm used to it.
It's more beneficial for yourself to keep your sanity.
To have something to work on.
Yeah. I don't know if you felt this way, but I try to make my problems smaller and smaller. Trying to let things go quickly. You know what I mean? Like, let it go. Like, just let it go, because as soon as you grab onto it, you're like, okay, I've decided that this is a big deal, and I'm going to make it a big deal for the rest of my life.
I saw a Facebook post the other day that I disagreed with, like, to the bottom of my soul. And I wanted so badly to comment and start something.
Yeah, you motherfucker. You should have.
And I didn't. If this was like 7 years ago, I would have. Once I gave that up, that's so much less stressful.
Yeah. Like, I have to convince this other person of my belief. That's hard to let go of.
Yes.
Like, it's really hard.
Like, I want to change your mind. I want to make you think like me, which is like toxic in itself in a way. I just need to tell myself they're an idiot, let me believe they're an idiot, and then keep scrolling. For some reason, I knew that this episode would be similar to like the Modest Mouse podcast, where it's like, we're getting existential. We're just going to get lost in conversation.
It's fine.
Good. This album is only 8 tracks, so...
It's 40 minutes.
We need to talk about something.
Yeah. It's also like similar instrumentation throughout.
A little bit, yeah.
But I like knowing that when I go back, we listen to stuff like this that I've never heard, and it's from the past, like, you know, almost 50 years old. It's like, okay, my experience is not new. Other people have lived through similar experience. People have wrestled with the same ideas. It's nice. I wasn't expecting that. Let me put it that way. I wasn't expecting
I wasn't expecting you to get that much out of it, and I'm glad that you did. On a less serious note, this song sounds like a 70s cop show theme song, but like on 400 milligrams of caffeine.
Yeah.
It's built around just this simple bass line, dun dun dun, dun dun dun, for 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. Does this manage to keep you interested? It does for me, but I'm curious for you.
Not really. The album for me, when I listen, it's more of a vibe. It's just a vibe. I'm not like fully enveloped in, you know, the atmosphere that it's creating. I'm just like, this is good. This is nice. This is fine. You know, I'm not really, I don't want to say active listener, but it's a vibe. It's like constant rhythm.
Yes.
And so it's hard for there to be like, and now take a deep breath and suck in this bridge, or, you know, let's drop into a little breakaway in a minor key.
Yeah.
It's nothing fancy in terms of composition.
I don't know.
Really?
I think this one's like really chaotic, like controlled chaos.
Maybe that's what it is. I've also like been listening to a lot of fucking jazz, so I'm like used to having like madness around, and so it's not super interesting to me.
I think this is just similar in a very different way.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Because like on the last track, it was just built around like kind of a really simple, scratchy guitar riff. But this one, there's like so many things weaving in and out of each other. I was trying to listen for like what was going on, and my mind can't single out these moments. It's like all these like synth lines and guitar riffs, they're mingling in a way.
This would be a really good album to do acid to.
Probably. I find it like really infectious. For these first 3 to 4 songs on the album, I can't help but like bob my head when I'm listening on my own time.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I mean when I say like it's a vibe. It's no secret to you that like I've been doing a lot of artwork lately.
Yeah.
And so like that was primarily what I was doing when listening to the record, was like doing artwork. And like it was more of just like a nice little groovy background album to listen to. Unfortunately, like I probably should have given a little bit more effort when it comes to like pulling stuff apart, but I found a lot of constant to where I'm like, it's hard to be like, okay, this measure of music was different than the last measure, because it's all very, very closely related.
It's very linear. Like
Right.
it's easy to get lulled into
Right.
that vibe listening style. I've been listening to this record for like 3 or 4 years now, so I've had time to really pick everything apart.
I'm a huge fan of like the cowbells and the drumming. Actually, like
Yeah,
that stuff excites me.
a lot of layers of percussion.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be a highlight on the next track, which we'll get to. These first 3 tracks are all like structured in a really similar way. Like in terms of like what David Byrne's doing on vocals, where like the first verse, it's usually like him in a more deranged vocal style or like spoken word or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say he comes across pretty flat. And
A little
well,
bit,
I don't.
yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't say flat.
He's quirky.
His range is very small, but it has like the Bowie-esque delivery.
It's like more personality than technique.
Yeah, it's Bowie. Like it's not like this powerful voice. It's like yeah, exactly. There's a quirky personality to it, and that's fine. I respect that.
But then it like cuts into these like really, on the last track I thought it was ghostly, on this track not so much, but like the more melodic sections, drawn out notes, more like backing vocals and layers. These first 3 tracks all have that similar structure. Like we're going deranged, cutting into these melodic refrains, and then the track will end on like, I hate saying like a catchphrase. Like on the last track it was "the heat goes on."
Mm-hmm.
On this song it's
I'm still waiting. Yep.
And then usually in the last third, it'll combine like all 2 or 3 vocal parts layered on top of each other. So you have like 3 or 4 David Byrne singing at the same time, along with like other background vocalists, other members of the band. Like it becomes just so catchy.
Right.
I get these first 4 tracks stuck in my head all the time.
That's a good thing.
Yes.
And here's one of the, like, I will be really straightforward with you. The record has been challenging for me because, first and foremost, we haven't done this in a while. We really just haven't. Second, I've listened to like pure instrumentation for like the last 2 months. Now, I have littered in, like, of course, the fucking Drake-Kendrick beef has been at the top of everybody's mind, and I like listened to a couple rap tracks recently. Like I went back and listened to fucking A$AP Rocky.
I was thinking about him recently.
Like fucking Holy Ghost and Canal Street, and
Yeah.
I went back and listened to Section 80 today.
It's good. It's still good.
Yeah, but my lane right now has been so small, and I'm not used to it, and it has been difficult for me. Like, truth be told, I think the record is simple on paper, but I think it's more difficult to enjoy or like deeply dissect because there's a lot of constant. There's a lot going on. It's like saying, okay, like when we go see fucking Kamasi Washington, I can't look at you and say, oh, do you remember when they did that song and they did this? You're like going to be like, not really. It was 12 minutes long and it was fucking the most chaotic shit you ever heard. Like,
Yes.
You're not going to be able to do that. Rather, it was more of an experience as a listener in a room full of people where you're going to be like, okay, what were the benefits and what were the enjoyable parts of the show? Like, there was only a few times during that show where I was like, oh my God, can you believe they just did? Like, I did not do that. Like, there was so much going on that, like, my brain could not dissect on the spot. Like, there was a lot. Mind you, I worked fucking 10 and a half hours.
No, I had the same experience.
Right.
I'm glad you said that because I felt kind of bad that, like, I felt like my brain had turned to mush a little bit by the end of the show.
Right.
Especially when they did like a 25-minute rendition of Computer Love.
And exactly. Like, we were sitting there just, like, the experience of that show was, okay, I'm going to watch these people interact on stage, not be like, oh, I fucking love this song, man. I fucking love this song. It's my favorite. Like,
Yeah.
It was not that. We were watching music at a very high level, and it's hard to sit there and go, I like this part. It's just not that. There is similarity in experience when it comes to this record. Like, there's a lot going on for, like, what should be kind of really simple song structure. Like, there's a lot of layering, and the mix is incredible. Like, I don't want to knock this record.
It still sounds good.
Right. Listening to the record, I did the Sony over ears. They have the XM 5000s, and then I did my AirPod Pros. And the AirPod Pros have like spatial audio. When you move your head, the direction of the instrumentation changes.
Oh, That's really cool.
It is cool. Usually I keep it fixed in one spot, but as of recently I've been allowed. So wherever my phone's at, the orientation, it kind of can create some different dynamic sound. Like, I enjoyed the listening experience. Like, as I got familiar with the record, it became more apparent that I enjoyed it. But the familiarity up front here in these first 2 tracks, like, there's the same ground as being tread twice.
3 times, really.
Yeah. And we'll get there here in just a minute. Well, all right then.
Track 3.
What a track.
The Great Curve.
You know, this is probably one of the more badass songs on the record.
This is my favorite song on the
Okay.
album.
Okay.
And honestly, it might be like one of my favorite songs ever. That might be a hyperbolic statement to make, but
That is bold.
this is just one of like the grooviest, I don't want to say like feel good, but like there's a quality of this song that I've never heard in anything else.
Yeah. The layering on this track specifically is some of the best on the record. We talked earlier about chaotic, even like jazz composition. Like, there's a lot of vocal layering going on throughout this track. And it's weird to know that it works because the vocals are hitting like on time, but they're also mismatched. So like you can have like a quarter note, quarter note, quarter note.
Those in between.
Yes. There is a little bit of what I referred to earlier on this track, like droning. Like, you do have the constant. It's not like your classic fucking drone, like long fucking guitar wails and all that shit. Like, we get guitar solo, but the repetition, it becomes, it's not really vocals anymore. It's just like this chant. This is where you get more of those African tribal music influence that really shines through on this song.
It's the most pronounced that influence has been so far on the album. The usage of, I don't know if it's bongos or congas, those are really sticking out in the mix.
Yeah.
I wonder how many layers of percussion are on this album in general. I think I saw like 3 or 4 drummers listed in like the liner notes. As chaotic as it is, it doesn't feel like any one note is out of place. This is like beautiful, controlled chaos.
I feel like on this record, or excuse me, this track specifically, it's like the first time we really get like a breakaway solo. You know, we get like an actual guitar solo. And like that guitar tone is a bit different than what we've heard so far, where it's been like more of like a clean, rhythmic guitar. We actually get like something that's stand out and different, and that's good. These tracks aren't short, by the way. Like, they're 5-6 minutes long. So, you know, being able to like have that in here is different compared to what we've had so far. This track list is pretty fucking short. So, you know, when it's few and far in between, I felt like in these first 2 tracks, like there's a little bit more to be desired in that way.
Yeah, the guitar solos on the first 2 tracks were like more unconventional. Track 1, computer malfunctioning. Track 2 sounded like a jet engine. It was more of like a tone on the solo that time around. This feels like it's like telling the future. The 80s had a certain sound, and this record came out in 1980, beginning of the decade. This sounds like that stereotypical new wave, like lots of effects type of guitar solo. I wonder if this is like one of the early instances of that.
It might be.
Like, to our ears, it sounds like normal. Like, I've heard this before.
Right.
A Tears for Fears song has probably used this tone. These guitar solos, by the way, played by non-member Adrian Belew, not in the band. He worked with like Frank Zappa, King Crimson. Like,
okay, King Crimson.
He might have like worked for Bowie too at one point. I could be wrong about that, but like more prog rock bands. It's kind of weird to see him here on this like African influenced dance rock album, like doing a shreddy thing. We also get 2 solos on this track.
Yeah.
We kind of like fade out with that second solo. I love the way that the guest vocals, the way they kind of weave in and out of what David Byrne's doing here. The session singer is like way more pronounced on this one, like involved in the whole track almost.
And actually like higher on the mix than David Byrne. And like the chorus, for example, he's taking the back seat, which is, you know, different. And it's kind of strange, and maybe it's just like of the time as well, but like the layering of vocals actually is pretty clean. I also think it's because on the mix, the vocal range is very condensed. And so it kind of helps it not, like the bass levels are super low on the vocals. And so they mix well together where the instrumentation is shining through, which those are heavier on the bass EQ. And then you have some lighter, and of course David Byrne's vocal delivery, it helps that. It's lighter in tone, a little flatter. Again, similar David Bowie, a little dramatized, controlled, small range. And that's not a bad thing because it's working in context.
What do you have to say about the lyrics on this song? Because this is the weirdest one so far.
The world moves on a woman's hips and all that.
Like, apparently David Byrne was like reading African literature, like spiritual philosophy type stuff.
There's a reason why it's called Mother Nature, my friend.
Is it weird that this theme of like this like feminine theme, I'm speaking terribly right now.
Yes, as you should.
Like the idea of like woman in the world, it's also like alternated with these verses of like the world knows nothing at all. Like they feel like a little bit disconnected, or are they?
A little juxtaposition.
Yeah. Like I don't know how to read into that really. Like they feel just not the same.
Does the world know nothing at all about this concept that he's trying to explain in the 80s?
Probably not.
Like on an African folklore to the general public? Yeah, maybe.
It's just a weird combo.
I fucking love this track.
This very famous song that you've somehow never heard
Never
before?
heard this, by the way. Seriously. I have never recognized this song before.
That's crazy. This song is so popular.
Really?
I hear this all the time.
I've never noticed. See, the thing is, though, now that I've heard it, I'll hear it everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, that's going to be the thing.
It might be like one of those songs that, like, you know how like certain songs like get turned into like Happy Birthday? I've probably said this before on the podcast. Like, We Are the Champions by Queen.
Or Living on a Prayer, or fucking That's That Journey song, Don't Stop Believing.
I bet that I've heard all those songs in the last 2 weeks at some point.
Yeah.
I didn't even know.
See, I was just thinking about that because I heard Burning Down the House at work.
That's one of those songs.
Yeah, it's one of those songs. And I'm like, oh shit, like, But I don't listen to radio, but like if you're out and about and you're in a store or wherever and the radio's playing, you'll pick up on something, and it's weird. Most recently where we've been shopping, we've been like to fucking Dillard's a lot because I've been getting my fucking suit fitted and everything for the wedding.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like catching songs I've never heard before. And then I'm like thinking to myself, like, who's fucking controlling the aux right now? Like, you know what I mean? Like
New songs?
Yeah, like just new weird shit.
The music that sounds like it came out of like a factory.
Yeah.
Shopping at Hollister or like some bullshit. But there's an audience for that somewhere.
Yeah.
The audience is big enough to warrant it being played in big corporate stores, you know?
It's not that somebody's like, oh, this is good. It's because it's more of a concept of agreeableness.
Yes.
And what is the most agreeable thing? Like, I don't play jazz for fucking my mother.
You have to know your audience.
Exactly. What are we even talking about? I'm at that point. What are we talking about?
The song blending in with like popularity.
Oh, yeah. I've never heard it, but I love this track.
I think going back to that point, this track kind of sounds like an infomercial. Like it's presented in like an advertisement style way.
And it is commenting on some of that.
Yes.
Which I like.
Me too.
This is for me.
What would you think if I told you that this track actually isn't satirizing American culture in any way, despite it feeling like that's the very obvious thing that it's doing?
Please elaborate.
Supposedly, this is about like the passage of time and being on autopilot and like not understanding how you came to a certain part of your life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there is definitely that.
But it feels like that is there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think that your point, it's like, yes, you are like, okay, how did I get this car and this house and this wife, and like, how did my life end up here? And like, to a certain extent, it is your decisions that you make in life to get you to that point. But at the same time, it's like, how much of it is really in your control?
even if that's not the intended message behind the song, this like goes beyond artist intention. Like you can't ignore that that's here.
Right. And I also think that it's really easy, even for you and I, to even make the comment of, oh, this could be a comment on American culture. Okay, well, it can be a comment on any culture. It's weighing the butterfly effect. Okay, you did this and now you're here. This small decision has changed your life. And these like, here, if we go back to lyrics, you may ask yourself, what is that beautiful house? You may ask yourself, where does that highway go to? You may ask yourself, am I right? Am I wrong? And you may ask yourself, my God, what have I done? I think that's like a huge blanket statement on like the human experience in the middle of this fucking dance track. Like that's fucking crazy to me.
We're going deep on this song
Yeah.
that I heard in H&M last
Exactly.
time I was there,
Exactly.
which is almost ironic in itself.
The point exactly.
You said that you like this track.
Oh, I fucking love this track.
What musically is doing it for you, though?
It's just more upbeat. It's more digestible. The tone feels optimistic for me.
Yeah.
Even with those kind of like this heavy subject, like this is all coming from a place of optimism. Like don't let the heaviness fool you. There's always a yin to the yang, my friend.
Is this the first time that we like hit a chorus on the album? There's been like vocal refrains on other tracks, but this is like, here's the chorus type track.
The other tracks were so drawn out repetition that I don't really know if you call them a chorus. They almost feel categorized as instrumentation.
Yes.
When you frame them that way, their words hold less value and they become more of a rhythm beat type of element to the song.
Which is weird because this track isn't structured any differently than those. Not by a ton. This is still following the no chord change formula,
Right.
like every other track. It feels way different when the chorus does come in, but there's that underlying echoey, reverby synth line and the bass line and the drums, they stay the exact same. The only thing that changes is like a little bright guitar comes in and like the vocal production changes a little bit. But it feels like there's a huge change between verse and chorus. And it's weird. They also feel mismatched in a way. Like the transition from chorus to verse is like awkward.
It's a little bit more abrupt.
It is. It feels good, but it's janky.
Is it though? Is it janky compared? I only think it sounds different and heavy-handed is because the previous two tracks were like everything feels like it's flowing on the same wave.
Yeah.
The way that these lyrics were broken up are a little bit more section. Normal song structure for vocals is more present on this track than it was on the previous two.
I wouldn't call this one of my least favorite tracks. It's funny that you're like clinging on to this one because like I love that repetitive nature of the opening trio.
I think one of the reasons why I gravitate more towards this track is more for the value and the theme and the message, how I pick that apart. I think I like it more too because it is similar in standard structure. I'm kind of more interested in that now, just based off of what I'm listening to relative of this album. Like, again, jazz, chaos. Literally, I playing piano, I play in a very chaotic way. That's how I like to play.
Okay.
Because I don't have to make it listenable for anybody else.
So hearing this more like structured, like pop-centric song, like feels good
Yes.
in comparison to that.
Right.
Where like the first three tracks are a little bit more like avant-garde.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm used to that.
I see that. Okay. That makes sense.
This song feels very poppy in a way that the first three tracks were not. And I like that here because it is still adjacent to these first three tracks tonally, obviously similar instrumentation. Like, I don't feel like we've gotten off the beaten path anyway. Like, you know how in some records we'll start out and we'll go like, oh, this was really interesting. And you'll have a track, 4 tracks apart that you don't know really how these tracks are related on the same record. You're like, oh, well, like this song sounds like it belongs more on this record by this band instead of here. Like this might be leftover.
Right.
This track probably has a little bit more of that pop feel.
It does.
But it's still playing in the same sandbox as the other songs. Like it belongs in the album, but it's still playing into the popular.
It's foretelling what the band will do next.
Right.
That's an excellent point. Thank you. I think the next track that we're about to get into like has a similar quality to it.
Wow, what a great track. Wow.
This is track 5, Houses in Motion.
Unique one.
I actually prefer this one to Once in a Lifetime, I think.
Oh, I love this track. This is one of the track highlights for me.
I had a feeling that this would be one that you'd gravitate towards, especially with you in your jazz mode.
Yeah.
And we get some jazzy horns on this track. There were horns earlier on The Great Curve. I don't think we talked about them. They were like way more chaotic and like stabby on that track. On this one, they're flowing.
I don't know if we've really established it, but there's something about these tracks and the key that they're in that feel like kind of haunting.
On this back half?
Like just in general on this record. I don't know if you feel this way, but to me, even the more agreeable track like Once in a Lifetime, I don't know what it is, but like there's like maybe it's like a bit of nostalgia playing tricks on me, but like there's a feeling of like deep uncomfortableness. I don't know what that is.
No, there's for sure something unsettling about, like, for the first half of the album, it's like anxious energy.
Yeah, it's a lot of that.
And the second half is more like reflective, slow, depressing stuff. I don't know if you've caught on to like the pacing of the album. Like,
no, maybe I haven't. And I think the part of the reasons why I'm struggling with the pacing is because of like the rhythmic nature. Like everything's framed in rhythm. And so it's hard to like dissect those ebbs and flows a little bit for me because the rhythm is like mostly upbeat.
Mostly.
When I think of tracks that are more reflective, it's slow tempo.
Right.
Like you naturally gravitate towards, at least in my mind, I naturally gravitate. You think of like a slow love song. That's reflective.
Same. No, I always
right.
gravitate towards like the dreamy, slow.
Right.
Like, we're going shoegaze on this one.
It's
ballad.
like it is a decision in song structure from the ground up. When you define tempo, you're defining, I'm going to create emotion on this length of time. And usually slower being a reflection of the human mind. In your thought process, when you're reflective, you slow down.
Right.
And you think deeply about things. Time feels like it goes by slow. Where in like reality, only later in time when you go back and reflect on it, are you assigning meaning. In like in tempo, when you slow down, it's deciding that we're not taking action, we're thinking back on something. This album is framed in fast tempo. This reminds me, and this is like a new concept for me in music. When Kamasi Washington played Prologue for us live, he said before he played the song, he said, this is called Prologue, and this song's about, as a group of people, as humanity, we know where we need to be, and we know what we need to do to get there, but we won't let go. What we're,
I remember what you're talking about. Yeah.
He's just saying we need to let go of the old ways. That song is the fastest, most chaotic shit I've ever heard. And it's like, where do you assign that reflective nature of that message that he was trying to say? And it's like, oh, wait, as an artist, you can still decide that this chaotic, fast, crazy mess, that's what that means to you. It doesn't need to be this conventional, classic orientation of slow tempo.
You can make that your love song.
Right.
Insanity.
Exactly. And like, I'm not used to that. And I think this record is challenging some of those beliefs.
Yes. When I was talking about the pacing of the album, I don't know if you noticed this, but for the first 3 tracks, it gradually ramps up in intensity and speed. Like the tempo goes up tracks 1 through 3. Yes. Like, cause The Great Curve is one of the fastest like rock tracks I've ever heard. That's not like death metal.
That's not, fucking.
It's not like intense. It's like it's a party. And then starting with track 4 and 5, you kind of get your more conventional pop structure. We have choruses, and then the last 3 tracks are like a dirge. downward until you get to the overload, which is like, it feels like going to a funeral, you know?
I can't wait to talk about them.
That's one of the things that really intrigues me about this album. Very deliberate pacing.
It's really weird.
It is.
Because I think why we're taking so fucking long, by the way, we have not really talked about a record quite like this.
And that was my intent.
I don't think I really saw that. See, my perspective going in was like, oh, Getter's just going to show me something different and new. But I didn't know what that thing is. Yeah, sure, instrumentation is a thing, but like it's more than just the tone that's different about this record than things that we've done previously. We've talked a lot of rap, a lot of like rock. You know, we've done Bowie, we've done
Stevie
Modest.
Wonder.
Yeah, like there's a lot of interesting things that we've covered. And this is one of those records in particular where I'm like, oh, like this is a really niche subject matter. And I don't know a lot about the band, but I know they have a history of popularity. And I'm trying to think like, what was it like when this first came out? Like, I don't really, because to me, I'm like, oh, this is fucking weird, like crazy.
You mean like, what was the landscape?
Yeah.
Like, well, we just came off the 70s, which is like classic rock, prog.
Neil Young.
Like singer-songwriter, Bob Dylan.
Beatles.
Yeah, the Beatles at the end of the 60s. And then the 80s are weird. I don't know if this album is really representative of the 80s, besides like a few guitar tones here and there. I actually been meaning to ask you, like, do you think this sounds dated, this album?
Yeah, but not...
I think this still sounds fresh now.
Okay, it sounds dated based on the technology, but composition, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. I've been chasing something like this since I heard this album, like hoping to find it somewhere in modern music. I don't really see it.
If I can think about a landscape that this fits into, I think of like Crowded House. You ever heard Crowded House?
Is it a band?
One hit wonder. Don't dream it's over. Hey now.
Oh yeah.
Dream it.
Not a bad song.
No, not at all. I love that track. It's one of my favorites. But that is like the only few. I don't have a lot of history with 80s music. When I think of 80s, I think of like disco art, like, you know, like more of like disco influenced R&B, and
that's a bit more 70s, but
well,
it might bleed into the decade.
Yeah, the 80s feel like it's defined by technology,
like your first like electronic drum machines on tracks,
right,
that don't age that well.
Exactly.
Hair metal.
Yes, exactly.
Synth pop.
Exactly. And I'm not used to this lane, and that's quite different for me. 80s are referenced in a way, like in pop culture, that like feel cheap.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like easily written off of like, oh yeah, look at that. It was like economic prosperity.
Materialism.
Like, yes.
We're going to the mall.
Exactly. And so having stuff like this is kind of challenging those beliefs for me.
The 80s is still kind of new to me. I just now shook that I hate the 80s thing a few years ago. And this is one of those bands that finally did that for me. And The Cure and Tears for Fears. And
The Cure, yeah. You've been, there's a couple bands that you've been like, that I'm unfamiliar with, and you're just like, oh, you got to check them out. They're fucking awesome. And I'm like, wait. Huh?
I always thought the 90s was the beginning of alt music.
Right.
And 80s was really the thing.
They laid the groundwork, you know. So now when you think about the 80s, you can like find the stuff that like this feels like it's still hanging on the coattail, or excuse me, riding on the coattail of singer-songwriter, but it's like the singer-songwriters that like embrace the change.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
For example, this is something I forgot to bring up earlier. The influence of hip-hop music, early hip-hop. This is 1980.
You're talking like strict beat and vocal, like before samples.
On the track Cross-Eyed and Painless, facts are lazy and facts are straight. Facts are... He does a little rap.
That is a rap. I almost said that earlier.
I meant to bring it up.
Because I didn't want to like fucking throw shade at this record, but I almost said like, is this fucking Linkin Park?
This is the earliest influences of like Curtis Blow and like the Sugar Hill Gang, like basketball is my favorite sport.
Yeah.
Like, that was new right now.
Is it a coincidence that this is a record inspired by African music?
I'm sure that has something to do with it.
Exactly.
I think they recognized, and they maybe even were quoted as saying, like, we knew the landscape was changing. And it's weird to hear, like, early hip-hop influence on rock. This isn't Limp Bizkit, you know?
Exactly. I think a lot of that can be tied into rhythm. Like, the basis of rhythm being the root of this album. We're breaking new ground here, motherfucker.
We're getting there.
Jesus. This is one of the hardest book reports I've ever done.
The trumpet solo is like crazy on this.
Yeah.
Where it's more like air than melody.
Yeah. I got to hear a little bit of that on Wednesday.
Yeah. It was really very like avant-garde.
Let me tell you, off topic, but Kamasi Washington, something that I love about the new record is the absolute just unforgivingness to wail on the fucking saxophone.
Yeah.
And it's just like out of key, no melody. When he did, is it Lasanu? Is that how you say the first track of that new record?
Oh God, I wouldn't know.
But when the track opens, it says, it's like giving praise, give praise to God and all these things. And then if the track is based on that gratitude, what the fuck does that wailing mean? You know what I mean? Like, what does that wailing orient itself in? I'm interested in that as a choice. If this is going to be a song about gratitude, why are these tones so out of key and uncomfortable?
Yeah.
I think that stuff's interesting on stuff like this record. And mind you, Kamasi Washington, deep African influence.
Right.
And crazy how that kind of worked out.
I know, right?
And I'm interested in these choices that this band's making. That horn solo is not comfortable to listen to. It's actually saying like, oh, here I am, endure me, you know? So I like that as a choice. I love, dude,
This is seen and not seen.
this track. What the fuck? I love it.
I think this is musically one of my least favorite songs on the record, and then thematically is one of the most interesting.
Yeah. For me, like the track, I don't know if it's just you or just me, but all I hear is maraca. Like just the shaking of a maraca.
That might be the highest mixed instrument here.
And then it's like, he molded his face to fit a personality. Like, what is that?
How can you be cheery with this deadpan vocal delivery?
Yes.
Damn it.
Interesting concept.
This is like borderline spoken word.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
There's very little in terms of like melody, like where the music is. This is ambient with a drum on top of it and some man talking.
Is it weird to categorize this record as like a psychedelic record?
I don't think it is. No.
And that's something that I've been struggling with. Because I'm like, is this or is it not?
Is it weird because our idea of psychedelia is like
It's so developed far beyond where this started.
70s?
Yeah.
I'm on acid. This is like the scary side.
Yeah, this is like the mescaline fucking side of things.
This doesn't have like those like classic rock cliches. Like this feels like very experimental.
But it's delivered in a tone that is classic rock. And that's what it borderlines for me. It's sitting in a very weird spot in my brain. It's like, I don't know if you felt this way, and maybe this is just me, but when we do the podcast, primarily as a host, I feel that the discussion is about the topic, but when we compare it to other things, especially when it comes to like decades and time, it feels like a bridge. You know, each new thing that we do feels like a bridge in knowledge from, okay, like you can take a step here into this and from here into this. Like when we reference the Beatles, you know, down to Pink Floyd, you're like, okay. And then like bands like this, they're a spot along the way.
Right.
But I didn't have that I am so unfamiliar with the territory. And so when you're catching the in-betweens and I'm not really used to hearing what I would consider to my ears like a transitionary period, I don't know how to handle that because it's also sticking out on its own. You know, it is also its own thing. You know, you mentioned earlier like the 90s alt rock.
Yeah.
Like you think that's where alternative starts in your head for like the longest time. And then you talk about The Cure and the Talking Heads. And then I'm thinking in my head, my first introduction to alt rock was through the emo genre, which that was based on, you know what I mean? Like you can track it, but this is far back enough even before that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
this is like completely unexplored grounds.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a little bit of introduction like from Bowie, but Bowie is like top of the ladder. You know what I mean? Having adjacent artists of similar era is not something that I'm familiar with. Like, because you showed me Bowie. Like, don't forget, like, you know, Bowie was something that you taught me about as well, and we gave the time to. So this is again another one of those steps, which is kind of exciting, but it's really difficult for me because it's brand fucking new.
Earlier, I said that this record came to me quickly, but I think when I said that, I really meant like the first 3 tracks came to me quickly. I think this is a grower album for sure. I wouldn't feel bad about like feeling weird in unexplored territory.
It's definitely been one of the more challenging things we've done in recent history where I've had a really hard time orienting myself. Because I think primarily what we've done as of late has been stuff that I've either really loved or had a good sense of familiarity with. And like this is just one of those things that has really been like a completely new thing.
Do you want to talk about lyrically what this track is getting at? Faces.
Yeah. I actually kind of like this.
I do too. It's odd though.
You know, it's funny. There's an ounce of truth to some of the points he's making.
Right, like being obsessed with celebrity culture, looks, vanity, appearance.
Yeah, but also scientifically, it is true. Like how you carry yourself is going to determine how you look as well. Human psychology plays a huge factor on your outward appearance. And yes, like there is stuff about trying to look good and everything, but there's a truth to that.
As evidenced in the line, this is why first impressions are often correct.
Right.
Which is like, it's a really blunt, weird line.
He's not wrong.
Correct. The way he presents it in the lyrics, though, is like, thinking about a face will shape who you are.
Yeah.
And I know it's like, he's not being literal, but like thinking about it in a literal sense is like insane. Like that is a psychedelic thought.
You know, I have oh God, I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody shares this same view, but like grooming, for example, is a form of self-love, like taking care of yourself in that way. When your ideals do not match your outward appearance, that will cause suffering psychologically. And one of my personal struggles is keeping up with my beard. Like for work and stuff, like I have a real problem with like trying to keep my beard tidy. And I think like, oh, if it gets too out of hand or, you know, that's one of my huge pet peeves right now. And I think it's interesting, this track, like this fucking album has been like fucking just hitting every fucking point. Like, oh yeah, it's like reading out to me like the fucking Holy Scripture here. I don't know how you feel about that. Do you feel like if you let your hair go for too long or your beard go for too long, does that affect your mood?
Oh, of course it does.
Right.
I had long hair all throughout the winter. Not nearly as long as yours.
Oh my God, my hair is so fucking long.
It was the longest that I'd had my hair in a long time. And I felt like I wanted to keep the hair long, but every time I went out in public, I felt like my physical appearance was like way less than it could be. And then I got my hair cut, and I've been feeling like way better.
You feel like $1 million
since
bucks.
Then. Also, like every winter, I gain weight.
Right. I mean, everybody does, man.
Yeah. And then now that it's warm again, I'm like, I can't wait to go running again and get back to like feeling good in a t-shirt. And
right.
Like there's a lot of credence to that idea. Physical appearance and personality. Like I'm less confident during those times.
I mean, there's a lot of things that play into that factor, you know.
And now that the weather is nice and the sun is shining,
right,
I feel like I can become who I am
exactly
truly again.
Right. Everything feels like alive again. Strange how the seasons work. I fucking hate the winter. I'm going to be flying to Florida for 4 months out of the year when I'm older. I guarantee you that much.
I'm getting to that point where that's the person I'm going to become.
I'm fucking getting to it real fast because seasonal depression fucking wrecks me. I hate Ohio so much for that reason sometimes.
Don't you love like the false springs and summers where it's like, hey, it's really warm. JK.
Just kidding.
It's -2 again.
Just kidding, you fucking idiot. I got you this time. Again, you dumb bitch. It gets us every fucking year.
Track 7.
I like this track.
Listening Wind. I knew that you would prefer this back half.
It's so slow. It's so slow and chill. It's just a nice cool down compared to, I don't know, like, I mean, like the previous track, it does keep you cooled off because it feels like spoken word, but it's also in a fast tempo. Like, this is one of the few times in the record where I feel like we can fucking unwind. Truly.
The vocal approach, it's more melodic, but much like the previous track, it's like a slab of like really atmospheric soundscapes with drums. Although the twist this time is that we're getting like a story track all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you read into the lyrics on this one, but like this is like a narrative song all of a sudden.
Yeah. It's quite different. But as far as the way the track makes me feel, I'm like, damn, this is so comforting.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it was a nice fucking hug compared to what we've been through.
Even though it's like incredibly unsettling.
Yes. As is everything in life. I like the, I don't know if it's like, is that like violin or is it like slide guitar? Like the wow, wow, wow.
I think all the weird sounds on this back half of the record are guitar with effects.
Yeah, it has like a violin like texture to it. You know, scraping the bow across the strings, which, I mean, that's what a guitar is. I mean, if you fucking put a, you know.
What do you think about like the narrative on this song? I don't know how much you've read into this, but I think this is a topic that would be really controversial if it was new now. Taking the perspective of someone in another country, Americans coming in, and like our protagonist of the song is like planning to bomb Americans.
Yeah.
That's the first person perspective we're taking here.
Yeah. I feel like I'm noticing it more now than I ever have. Some problems that I have with, especially modern America. I feel like as an American, as a young man, I don't know that I have a lot of pride in America. And it's mostly because I view America in a more of a militarized way, and how we do a lot of attacking. We're not really defending,
right,
in many ways. And I'm not a fan of that as a person. It doesn't reflect my sense of pride comes from a place of integrity, not a place of domination.
Yeah.
I don't view our America quite like. Now, granted, I'm extremely grateful for a lot of things that this country provides, but on like a geopolitical stage, I don't know that I'm proud in that way. I don't feel like America is the idealized version that was taught to me in the books. And I view our country as a warmongering greed pool that feeds on the suffering of people.
I know that the U.S. is like usually called like the world police. Like we kind of like impose that on every other country. You would think that status, like the influence that the U.S. has, could be used in a way more positive.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And things are way more complex than that.
Obviously, right. That's my point. Like,
this could be a 2-hour conversation off the mics.
Right. Like, I'm not proud to be an American anymore. And when I think about tracks like this, it reminds me why.
Right.
And I think about like the war in Iraq, and like, you're telling me a bunch of grown men with the education of 5th graders wouldn't be upset if we came in there and we fucking blew the door open and killed everybody in sight?
Yeah.
You don't think, yes, obviously there are bad people, but that was a war on a fucking group of people that we fucking funded. We put weapons there and we fought a war over land. We destabilized that fucking country. We've destabilized all these countries in the Middle East. For what? Not for me and you.
Yeah.
It's not for you and me. If anything, it's the people like you and me that suffer, the people that we know that have given their lives to the fucking military and they've been wasted on fucking bloodshed and then they come back home and they don't get supported and the fucking jig is up. It's over. Like, everybody gets it. We see what you did and we're tired of it.
Like, war support statistically would be at an all-time low whenever we go do this next thing that's
the fucking
inevitable.
Nazis are not taking over. I don't know if anybody fucking figured it out. There isn't a fucking hot war in Europe right now threatening America. I don't know.
There's tension with like Russia and China.
Yeah, obviously, but there's always that manufactured fucking shit.
Yes. It is manufactured to a degree. Some of it's real and some of it is phony. On this album, we're in the year 1980. The first Iran war hasn't happened yet. So what country do you think David Byrne is singing this song from the perspective of? Like, who is this person from?
Right.
Unless that stuff was bubbling already at the time. I don't want to get into history facts or anything, but
I mean, there was
curious.
There was Operation Desert Storm before we went over to fucking Afghanistan.
Yeah. And that might be like 90s even.
And like, there's always like, okay, look, there's only so much fucking earth, right? And there's always going to be a fucking battle for territory.
Sure.
But it's just more complex than fucking walking over next door and beating the other guy up with a rock.
Right.
I get it. But it's like, we all get it. We all understand that concept. Can't we just chill? Like, we all get it. You know what I mean, though? Like, okay.
Nice.
If every military general from around the world knows strategies of war and they all have the understanding that they're trying to protect the land that they have and possibly take more, wouldn't everybody just come to the agreement like we should just chill? If you knew that the other guy was trying to take from you from what you have and you were trying to take from the other guy what he had, wouldn't everybody just be like, hey, why don't we stop taking stuff from each other and learn to share maybe?
Hypothetically, from a logical sense, yes.
My frustration as a person has come from, okay, why can't the adults in the room practice what they preach to the fucking toddlers? Like, oh, you have to learn to share your toys. Oh, no, you've got to be nice when you speak to other people. How come the people at the very top aren't just like being talked to like that from like bigger adults so they can make life easier for us?
Great question.
I'm just saying, don't you think that if we practice what we preach, you know?
That won't ever happen.
Statistically speaking, no. But the love in my heart feels that way.
The wind in your heart.
The love, yes.
And the dust in your hair.
The wind in my heart.
We have to end this thing at some time.
This is a really great. Sorry.
This is a good song.
It's a great song.
I like this one better than the previous. We lost some audio.
Yes, briefly. Just the last song here. I think ultimately we've kind of discovered that throughout this listening experience where the beginning of the album feels like you're just thrown into it, and I think is a good commentary on the literally first title track being named Born Under Punches.
And this last track feeling like a funeral.
Yes. And I don't think I've ever really heard anything like this that really felt like a complete project. Like, I feel like this was a concept record and I didn't know it until it was over. You know what I mean?
I wonder if that was even the intent of the artist, but there's a very deliberate pacing about the album overall.
I think personally with the title of the album it is being named Remain in Light. Remember one time you and I were in the fucking Raising Cane's drive-thru, and I remember talking to you about something, and you were like, damn, doesn't the world suck? Or something like that. and we're just like, yeah, but you gotta be the change that you want to see in the world. You gotta be the light if you want to see the light. And I think the title of this record being Remain in Light, all of like the really terrible, heinous, uncomfortable human truths that we've discovered over the length of the album, it feels extremely deliberate and like,
Yes.
you know, so like a very spiritual record for which I don't think I was expecting, but I think it being like the 80s, you know, it's like, oh, it's easily written off. Like, oh, this is just like another funk record, you know, but it was like, no, there's that African tribal spiritual like element to it. And it feels like a night around the dance fire, you know?
It's crazy how much this conversation changed since the beginning.
Right.
Where it was like, the music is okay.
Yeah, it's really strange.
We always do this.
Something about the podcast that is, maybe we should explain it to the viewer, but like as a host, I know that you and I are going to show up as co-hosts and we're going to have a conversation, and we really never know where that conversation is going to take us. And like the beautiful thing about it is that we decide that we're going to dissect and critique a piece of art and like try to understand it. The only way that that comes about is through our dialogue. And so like you just never know how you're really going to feel about something until we have like a thorough conversation about it. It is a collaborative review.
Yes. It's been that way for a long time.
Yes, it's quite I've never noticed it in that way. And I really enjoy the format that we've taken.
I think like an equal example for me would be like reviewing Tron Legacy, you know? Something I never would have watched in the first place. And now I'm like, pretty cool movie.
You have to give it effort, you know?
Yes.
You have to, it allows you to give things effort. And I really enjoy that about these conversations. And I think not doing this for a while has made me realize how much I fucking appreciate it. Like, this is a fucking great podcast.
I've been missing it, man. If you had to give Talking Heads Remain in Light a rating, where are you going?
I truly think that I'm in for a few more re-listens, actually.
Okay.
But I think where I sit right like an 8.5, 9 out of 10. I feel like I'm hanging out in that range. I think the conversation for me was like, okay, I've heard the music. Now I need to understand it. Now I want to go back and I want to enjoy it. And I want to like, you know, have the information that we carried in this conversation. I want to see if I can get this album to a 10 out of 10 in my, you know, my ratings. I feel like it has a really strong potential to reach that.
I think historically this album is a 10 out of 10, but like personal enjoyment is somewhere between a 9 and a 10, like a 9.25. I enjoy the innovation, the weird pacing and tones, the lyrical topics. It's something really unique that I've never seen replicated anywhere else. I can't wait for you to, at some point, continue to interact with this album.
I'm excited. You've had a lot more time with this one than me. I'm really curious to know what has been over the years, the way you orient yourself in the record. Was it like based on the fact that you felt like you loved it, or were you trying to like pick at something new every time? What keeps you coming back? Maybe I should put it that way.
That's a good question.
Sometimes when you recommend really good shit, I feel like I do nothing but gush about how awesome it is. And I'm like, when you suggest stuff like this, before we leave, I want to know, like, if you're going to recommend this, what keeps you coming back?
I think when I first started listening to the record, I tried to get into it because it was so acclaimed. This is one of the most, like, beloved albums of the 80s. And once I had that love for it, I think that it comes down to, and some of these are reasons that I listed throughout the podcast, but, like, there are so many unique qualities about it. The one-chord song structure, the layering, the African influence. I'm not like a groove music guy. I love my sad white boy type stuff.
See, yeah, like that's why when you recommended it, I thought it was going to be something of that nature. Like,
okay.
You know what I mean? So it's weird it coming from you.
This is kind of new for me, but like the groovy bands, the jam bands, I've been listening to like Can. I don't know if I've ever showed you that group before.
No, I don't think so. I've never even heard.
Like 60s, 70s, like psychedelia. You ever heard the song like Drunken Hot Girls by Kanye?
Yes.
Drunken Hot Girls. That sample is from a Can song. And they mix it up to make the lyrics sound different.
Oh, dude, you're so cool. You just know so much shit.
It's useless knowledge, but thank you.
You're a little bit older. You're giving it to me. You're like a wise sage. You don't even know it.
I think like being a lover of like guitar music for so long, like hopping over into like pop music, synth, drum and bass centric music. I'm unlocking new loves and having this really funky rock dance album. It's a corner of love that I've never discovered before.
That's hilarious. It's been really weird to see you transform into that because
I know
when I look at you, that's not the Getter I met. You know what I mean? Like, you're just different, and it comes with your taste in music. It's strange because I feel like as a friend, I've always viewed this guy's got a vault of knowledge that he's unlocking slowly over time. He's giving to me. I'm like, oh no, he's just a guy. He's still discovering things.
I'm just some chump.
You're still discovering new music and shit.
Right.
I'm like, oh wait, he's not. He just didn't know everything beforehand. He's just dispersing the knowledge onto me. Like, you've had to develop new relationships with certain music, and
you're on the same path as I am, homie.
Right. What a G. What a G you are.
Thank you.
Dude, my recommendation tonight, I had a real hard time. Dude, I legitimately almost recommended Kendrick, but with all the beef and stuff going around, I really don't want to talk about him. Real talk.
You think it might be an overexposed subject matter?
Yeah, I'm just not interested in talking about Kendrick right now after him coming up in pop culture by everyone.
Sure.
I was going to do Section 80. I really wanted to do Section 80. And it probably will come up sometime in the future. But for right now, we always talk about Kendrick and how great Kendrick is. And but I don't want to talk about T-Pab or Good Kid, Mad City. I want to go back.
So where are we going, homie?
This is a movie I've been holding on for a while. And I've been really hyped to do it. This is one of my favorite movies as an adolescent. And I fell in love with it. And I thought at the time, it commented on something deep inside me as a young kid. I think as time's moving on, that message is still deep inside me, and I feel like I need to watch it and talk about it with you. We're going to do Ben Stiller's The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Oh, I did not see that coming.
I can't describe to you how much I love this film. And I think I'm going to draw a lot of connections to Murakami and surrealism.
Oh, I like that stuff.
It's a very psychedelic film in some ways, and at the same time is a yearn for courage road trip movie. And yeah, man, it's going to be cool. And I think you'll see my personality in it a little bit. This movie is very near and dear to my heart.
This is a movie that I think got mid-reviews when it came out, and then through my life since it was released, multiple people have sung the praises of it.
I think it's one of the most beautiful films ever made. And that straight up.
That intrigues me.
I think it's maybe it'll crush your soul. I cannot wait to talk about it. There's so much going on here that I think is going to be interesting.
Who else are there? There's a female
from SNL.
Kristen Wiig?
Yes. Kristen Wiig.
Really? That was just a guess.
Kristen Wiig and Sean Penn.
Oh, okay.
And somebody else. Oh. She played the bitch that fucks Daryl in Step Brothers. I think she might be in SNL too.
Who's Daryl?
Or Dale.
Oh,
Dale.
The other brother?
The other brother's wife.
Oh,
she's in it.
The guy from Severance.
Yes. Adam Beck, his wife.
Adam Scott.
God damn it. I do that every time.
I don't know her name, but I know who you're talking about.
Yes. She's in it.
And she's good.
She's great. Things. She's great in this. And yeah, man. I've been holding on to this one for a long fucking time.
This is a film that I don't think I would have gone into on my own, but it's something I think that I'm going to appreciate much more, and I'm going to be glad that you brought me along. I've heard so many good things about this film.
I can't wait, man. That was fucking awesome. Fucking praises to anybody that's listened to this for more than 5 minutes. If you've made it here, congratulations. You're one of my favorites.
You've won nothing.
You've won nothing, and I feel good about myself. Congratulations. But regardless, that was great. Love you, man.
Love you too, brother.
Until next time.
Adios.